And we're kicking off today with Money in the Bank, as Roman Reigns will team with Solo Sikoa to face the Usos in Bloodline Civil War. With Reigns involved, this match will likely be headlining Saturday's show in London, England, but plans are far from set for this much-anticipated contest. WrestleVotes is reporting that they've heard two very drastic finishes in play for the Bloodline Civil War, and that the Usos and Sikoa were part of a run-through session this past Friday. WWE wanted the Usos and Sikoa to rehearse something from this Saturday's show, but it's unclear as to what exactly WWE wants the three brothers to rehearse ahead of time. When Ringside News asked around, they were told that there is a confirmed plan for this weekend, but that those in creative don't know it at this time. Instead, the Bloodline Civil War finish, like all Bloodline stories, is being kept a closely guarded secret, with Vince McMahon, Triple H, Roman Reigns, Paul Heyman, SmackDown lead writer Ryan Callahan, and Michael Hayes being some of the few who know what's happening. WWE has put a lot of effort into this Bloodline creative direction, which has clearly paid off, but how do you predict this Civil War will go when the two sides face off at Money in the Bank? Money in the Bank is always a highlight of WWE's calendar, and thanks to the two ladder matches, it is one of the most exciting and unpredictable nights of the year. With McMahon's influence on WWE's creative team well established, there's been a lot of talk about the plans for the show, and fans can expect a major twist to unfold at the O2 Arena. BWE reports that WWE is planning a big upset for this Saturday's event, but unsurprisingly didn't share what this upset will be. What they did reveal, however, is that this upset won't affect Cody Rhodes, who will face Dominic Mysterio, or LA Knight, who will be competing in the men's Money in the Bank ladder match. Rhodes is considered the favorite in his match with Mysterio, while Knight was considered the favorite to be winning the men's ladder match until very recently. Knight was considered the obvious choice to win until the return of Logan Paul last week, and with a rumored push for Damian Priest, Knight's win is no longer a sure thing. We'll have to wait until Money in the Bank to see what this big upset will be, but odds are that whatever WWE has planned will divide the fans this Saturday in London. Since WrestleMania 39, Vince McMahon has been making changes to WWE's weekly programming, despite infamously saying that he wouldn't be in the weeds of the creative team going forward. Both Raw and SmackDown underwent changes last week, all at the whim of the chairman, but it wasn't due to a lack of effort from Triple H to prevent it from happening. Fightful Select reports that the reason WWE has been announcing matches for Raw and SmackDown ahead of time is in an attempt to Vince-proof shows and prevent him from making changes. While Vince typically likes to keep advertised matches no matter what, that wasn't the case last week, as Seth Rollins' open challenge on Raw didn't go as advertised. Instead of Tommaso Ciampa answering Rollins' challenge, Seth was attacked from behind by Finn Balor, and a total 3 matches were cut without explanation from last week's SmackDown. Fightful added that people in almost every level of WWE are frustrated by the recent change that McMahon has made to Raw and SmackDown, and a meeting was called earlier this week. That meeting included Vince, Triple H, Bruce Pritchard, Kevin Dunn, and the creative team, but it was reported after that the consensus in the meeting is that everyone will just have to get used to Vince's meddling. It wasn't just the past week of TV that McMahon changed, as Fightful stated that he has been making plenty of changes via the phone, and made changes in person during the June 5th episode of Raw. Like we stated, Vince typically prefers to have matches that were announced in advance take place, which is why it was so strange that he nixed not 1, but 3 matches from last week's SmackDown. During McMahon's retirement, it became evidently clear that the WWE product is in better hands when he isn't touching it, and while the product is still strong, resentment is growing behind the scenes. WWE has just one more episode of TV before Money in the Bank, and while plenty has been promoted for this Friday's SmackDown, there's no guarantee anymore that it'll happen. For years, fans agreed that McMahon would never retire, and once he did, the consensus was that he'd never return, and this all shows that in the end, Vince McMahon will do what he wants, no matter how people feel in WWE. WWE programming has seen a lot of changes over the past year, with many being praised when Triple H was truly in control of creative, but McMahon continues to influence everything we see. During the June 16th SmackDown, Io Sky had agreed that Bayley would put her spot in this Saturday's Women's Money in the Bank ladder match on the line against Shotzi, and now we know what exactly WWE had planned. During Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer commented on the Nixed match and revealed that Shotzi was supposed to win and take Bayley's spot at the upcoming event in London. This would have continued the tensions between the two Damage Control allies, and Meltzer confirmed reports that it was thanks to Vince McMahon that the match was cut. With one more SmackDown before Money in the Bank, there's a chance that Shotzi could still take Bayley's spot, but for now, the role model's place in London is safe thanks to Vince McMahon. Tommaso Ciampa knows all about plans being changed, as originally he was going to answer Seth Rollins' open challenge on the June 19th Raw in what would have been an excellent match. That was until McMahon changed things, believing that Ciampa losing his first match back from injury was a bad idea, but that's not the only time that Ciampa, McMahon, and change have come together. As fans saw on Raw, Ciampa returned with a much darker beard than usual, and it was clear that it was dyed, and this decision was seemingly made because of the executive chairman. During Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer stated that Tommaso Ciampa dyed his beard because Vince McMahon hates graying facial hair and always wants wrestlers to look as young as they can. Now, if Ciampa had not chosen to dye his beard, there's no assurance that McMahon would have made him dye his facial hair, but Ciampa chose to avoid risking upsetting his boss with his looks. McMahon doesn't even need to make requests, and those in WWE will do what they think he wants, and the fact that Ciampa made this decision shows how much influence Vince McMahon has over his sports entertainment kingdom. Since his transformation into the Tribal Chief, Roman Reigns has had an almost perfect record when it comes to undisputed WWE Universal title defenses, albeit with one exception. At last year's Royal Rumble, Reigns got himself intentionally disqualified during his match with Seth Rollins, meaning that he kept the title, but Seth officially won the match. Of course, there's a ton of history between the two, and when speaking to ESPN's First Take, Rollins shared his belief that it's only a matter of time before he and Reigns face off again. He said, "Yeah, it's inevitable. Our story starts in 2012. We came in together, we broke in together as a team and have gone our separate ways, but we're both at the top of our games. Entering our prime, right in the meat of it. Both world champions at the same time on separate brands, him on SmackDown, me on Raw. I think inevitably we're going to cross paths again. We have to. I'm looking forward to it. He's on an incredible run right now, one of the longest title reigns of all time. Along the way, there's been only one guy he hasn't been able to put away, and you're looking at him. If it comes down to it, we're gonna have to tangle one more time." If that match does happen, it likely won't be soon, considering that the pair are on different brands, and Seth currently holds the recently introduced World Heavyweight Championship. Reigns has been practically unbeatable for the past 3 years, but Seth knows how to beat the Tribal Chief, and with the Usos no longer a factor, it'll be interesting to see a rematch between the two. Right now in WWE, few stars are more over than LA Knight, who has been a hit with fans since ditching the Max Stu pre-name last year. Despite WWE higher-ups being hesitant about pushing the 40-year-old star, Knight has proven his doubters wrong and has Triple H to thank for his opportunity. Speaking to Chris Van Vliet of Insight, Knight recalled WWE being ready to part ways with Knight until Triple H saved his career with the company. He explained, "I'm pretty sure I was fired, and it just hadn't officially happened yet. Without getting into too many details, some things happened. I don't remember what it was, but some things happened, and then I had gotten a FaceTime from Triple H. Hey, we want to keep you around. We want to do this, that, whatever. And okay, cool, good. So somehow I had been saved from being thrown off the cliff." Knight didn't go into detail as to what had caused the issues with WWE, but it must have been something major if he was sure he was going to be fired. Not only was Knight not fired, but he could be mere days away from the biggest win of his career, and those who have been enjoying his work have Triple H to thank. In the interview, Knight also had some fun with the idea of being Mr. Money in the Bank and teased that he would be challenging for something other than a WWE championship. He said, "I gotta go to the top man and run for King Charles. I know he's old and beaten down and, busted up, but I've gotta take the crown." What's your take on LA Knight? Is he destined to be a future WWE World Champion? Make sure to leave your views in the comments. Since his debut at NXT TakeOver Vengeance Day in February 2021, Knight has continued to amass his fan base, but it's not just the members of the WWE Universe who are excited to see his work. Each week, Booker T calls the action on WWE NXT, but the 6-time world champion has been watching Knight on SmackDown and has been liking what he sees. On his Hall of Fame podcast, Booker called for WWE to put a rocket on LA Knight and capitalize on his current connection with the WWE Universe. Booker added that he watched Knight early on in WWE get nothing close to a push and said that the superstar had to sprinkle some salt and pepper and has worked hard to get where he is. The 2-time Hall of Famer said he believes it is inevitable that Knight will one day get pushed as a top star, and winning the men's Money in the Bank ladder match would be a huge step for Knight. LA Knight is red hot right now, and WWE would be wise to capitalize on his popularity. And whether he wins this Saturday or not, expect to see plenty of LA Knight in the years to come. At Elimination Chamber, Sami Zayn challenged for the undisputed WWE Universal Championship in an emotional night for Zayn in his native Canada, but not every Canadian had a match on the show. In WWE's first premium live event in Montreal since 2009, Kevin Owens appeared after Zayn's match but did not get to compete at the event. And while speaking with Love Wrestling, the prizefighter reflected on being snubbed. "I gotta be honest, not being on the actual show was a real bummer. There's no way around that. I really wish I could have been there. But to be a little part of it at the end was great, and to see Sami get his really big moment that he deserved and to see everybody reacting to him the way they did after all these years. Obviously, anytime he'd show up in Montreal, he'd get a great reaction, but to be in that spot in that moment, for him, that was really big. It was great to see that, but not being on the show definitely hurt a little. But honestly, it's not even just because it's Montreal. I feel the same way everywhere. Anytime we go to Canada and I'm not on one of the shows, I'm like, why am I not on the show? Canada is funny this way, where we've tried to explain this to people in WWE and other wrestlers and even people in management, but I don't think they quite grasp that Canada is just one big city in a way for their hometown guys. Whether we go to Winnipeg or Toronto or Quebec or Vancouver, anywhere across Canada, really, we're welcome as being hometown guys. That's really special, so anytime there's a show in Canada and I'm not on it, that hurts a little. Owens' segment on the show saw him save Zayn during a post-match beatdown in an emotional moment for the two best friends. But for Kevin, getting to compete at Elimination Chamber would have meant the world to him. NXT news now, as this week's show was the second week of the NXT Gold Rush, and Carmelo Hayes was able to keep his run as NXT champion going strong. Facing Baron Corbin, who reverted back to his lone wolf gimmick, Hayes was often overpowered in the match, and after escaping the end of days, hit nothing but net to score the pinfall victory. This was the latest epic showing by Hayes, who competed on this week's Raw against Finn Balor, and despite losing to the Irish superstar, earned a huge ovation backstage, according to BWE. Hayes' future on the main roster is looking very bright, but for now he is the top name in NXT. And with Corbin in the rearview mirror, it remains to be seen who's next to take on the champ. And we're ending today with more from Hayes, as his loss on Raw was quite the surprise, given that WWE tries to give debuting talent a big win in their first match on the main roster. Speaking to Sportskeeda this week, Vince Russo suggested that the idea behind the loss was from Vince McMahon, and argued that the chairman had this finish simply to stick it to Triple H. Triple H worked for years as head of NXT, a role now filled by Shawn Michaels, and do you think Russo's suggestion is correct? Let us know in the comments.